Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Well done, everyone, for making it to the end of day one of UK Reef, and thank you all for choosing to come and spend the next half an hour with us. I'm Faye Holland. I'm the Partnership Director for the Cambridge-Manchester Partnership, which is the UK's first cross-city collaboration. So what is the Cambridge-Manchester Partnership? It's basically a partnership that will supercharge innovation-led growth in the UK. It's a very deliberate, ambitious collaboration to prove that two cities working together can achieve a lot more than what they could achieve independently. So if we look at both cities, we have to think about what do they offer. So both of them are world leaders in research and deep tech technology research as well. But they each bring something together that the other doesn't have. So Cambridge is well known for early commercialization. It's well known for investor density. We have 27 unicorns within Cambridge. The last one was only a couple of weeks ago with Nyobolt. And I would suggest that by the end of this year, there will possibly be another one to add to that list. It's also the world's most concentrated innovation zone, according to the Global Innovation Index. And it's the #1 university globally for producing successful tech founders. If we then look to Greater Manchester, what that gives us is inevitably scale. 2.8 million people, £100 billion into GVA, into the UK economy. It has significant development sites for both lab and manufacturing, which is really important when you look at their prowess in the materials and manufacturing space. They're home to the Henry Royce Institute and the National Graphene Institute, and they have a really buoyant, growing innovation ecosystem that, quite frankly, is consistently underestimated, that I think that we can help to propel with them. Together, they've got 152 Nobel Prizes, 152. That is huge. That is really significant impact. But the bit for me that is the most exciting is that together with the research and the industrial prowess, they give the UK something that hasn't been tapped before. So let's take a look quickly then at what the partnership is going to do. And we have three very clear objectives. The first objective is to unlock innovation-led, and that's a critical piece, innovation-led economic growth. And so the ways we're going to do that is by connecting the two complementary ecosystems together, and also to enable talent and opportunities to move much more freely between those two cities. The second thing we're going to do is build for global impact. So what do I mean by that? There are two things. We are very good at starting businesses. We kind of fall a little short when it comes to scaling businesses. So what can we do to improve our homegrown excellence and to help them grow and build? So that's the first part of the global impact. The second part is actually around building an investable proposition for inward investment into our cities, making Cambridge and Greater Manchester a landing place for UK investment. And then underpinning all of that is our third objective. And our third objective is around good growth. And you're going to hear an awful lot of that through the partnership. And what we're talking about there is ensuring that opportunities around innovation and entrepreneurship reach a much broader audience than just the innovation ecosystems that already know them. And that's quite an important part. So that's kind of the framing and the introduction to the partnership, because this is our first particular outing. So it's great to come and share this with you. And please come and talk to me afterwards and tell me how it resonates with you, because it's important that it does, because we want all of you to come on that journey with us. So talking about the journey, we're going to now have 2 quick fireside chats. It seems really mean that we're going to sit down when you're all standing up, but I'm just going to go with it anyway. So first of all, I would like to introduce Shaun to come up and join us, please. And I think, thank you. I think I'm one of the only people in this room that's been on just one panel today. I think everyone else has been on multiple panels. I mean, I would even say the likes of Mayor Paul Bristow and Catherine Chapman have been serial panelists today in the most positive way. So Shaun, thank you so much for joining us. People who know you will know that you wear many different hats. So you are the UK chair of AstraZeneca. You last week were started in your new role as chair of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Business Board, which has reshaped as well. And we're delighted that you are also the chair of the advisory board for the partnership. So when you have such a full roster, why did you agree to do the partnership board as well?
Yeah, thanks, Faye. So first and foremost, welcome to Leeds. Boy, it rains here, doesn't it? Goodness me. I thought Manchester was bad enough. So a real pleasure to be here. And so I've done a panel already. And in this role of AZ UK chair, I get to do quite a bit of public speaking and getting grilled now and again, including 2 weeks ago at a parliamentary select committee on UK-China relations. I'm more intimidated by being interviewed by you, Faye.
Quite right.
Today, so let's see how that goes, Yeah, so, not to be too patronising, Cambridge is terribly important to AstraZeneca. So we had Cambridge Antibody Technology in Cambridge since the acquisition in 2007, but in 2012, 2013, Pascal made the courageous, fearless decision to leave Cheshire and relocate our global headquarters and our R&D centre to Cambridge. For those of us who grew up in and around Alderley Park and Macclesfield, that was never going to happen. That's where we grew up. That's where our roots were. It's a beautiful part of the world. It took somebody from outside the company to come in and say, you know what, you need to do things a little bit differently and shake things up. And of course, can I say this at this event? The choice was London or Oxford, and we, Pascal, chose Cambridge. He tells the story because he was looking at a bit of a field, really, and somebody said, "This will be 1 Francis Crick Avenue," and that was the moment he said, "Okay, this is where I want us to be based." So 1,200 people came from Cheshire to Cambridge out of a R&D group of about 4,000 or 5,000 maybe. I can remember being in Cambridge and people saying, well, only 12 or 1,300 people have moved. That's not very good, is it? And of course the answer to that was, look, if everybody would have moved, we might as well have stayed in Macclesfield, So we brought 12 or 1,300 people down. We're now 4,000 people. I don't know how many of you, there's many familiar faces here, how many of you have been to the Discovery Centre on the biomedical campus, which is quite extraordinary, isn't it? 1.1 billion cost. It wasn't that when we put the budget to the board initially, but that's the way these big building projects seem to go. And it took a wee bit longer than necessarily was ideal. But anybody says that AstraZeneca isn't committed to the UK and isn't investing in the UK is badly, badly wrong. So we're 2,300 people in the disc. We spend 3.5 billion pounds in R&D in the UK every year. So Cambridge has become our home. And therefore, what's important to Cambridge is important to AstraZeneca. So we want to be in the ecosystem, but we want to be part of the ecosystem and we want to drive the ecosystem. And then, of course, the joke I make at home is you get one chair and then people are throwing chairs at you left, right and centre. I need a dining room with all these chairs. But it's terribly exciting and terribly flattering, to be invited to be the chair of the mayor's Business Advisory Board. We had our first meeting about a week ago. From my perspective, I thought it went very well. There was some very candid feedback to Mayor Paul, which hopefully was helpful. And then for me, as a South Manchester boy, to be asked to chair the Cambridge-Manchester City partnership was a bit of a teary moment, with Mayor Paul, and is he still Mayor Andy? For the time being. So that kind of connects, Cambridge and everything we're doing and love about Cambridge with the Northwest. And of course, Macclesfield isn't actually in Greater Manchester. But we had Mayor Andy at an event about a year ago, and there were 300 or 400 people in the room. And he said, right, show of hands, how many of you live in Greater Manchester? And of course, it was about 60% of the people in the room. So he declared Macclesfield part of Greater Manchester. So being able to make that linkage, Faye, is really, really exciting for us as a business. It's the right thing to do, but the business benefits that can flow from this can be enormous.
Thank you. So, we're delighted to have you as our chair, keeping our feet held firmly to that fire. And the other thing you should know is that we've started trading stories now, haven't we, as someone else who's from Manchester. Shaun always tells us a story in a meeting, and I've started to respond by telling an equivalent story now. So that should keep it real for all of us, shouldn't it? So let's talk about collaboration a little bit. The partnership is very fortunate to be supported by both mayoral combined authorities, the city councils, businesses, investors, advisors. And you have been involved for a lot longer than I have. You were there literally from the start of it. What do you feel about the collaboration and the tone of that collaboration?
Yeah, I think when you move around and talk to people, there's loads of people who claim that they were the person who said we should have a Manchester-Cambridge City partnership. David Cleaveley is probably the loudest. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but no one's going to argue with him, are they? My observation is, it's a great thing to do for all the reasons you described, Faye. And there was a period where we didn't really have the resource to start to execute on all these exciting opportunities. We had more panels than real activity. Is that fair, Catherine, to say? And I'm going to flatter you, so you're going to be nice to me in the remaining few questions. But I think when Faye came on board and we assembled the team, the change from the first board meeting we had in Manchester, which was very exploratory and inviting the advisory board members to give their mission and vision and hopes and expectation, to the board meeting we had last week, was night and day. So we're now at the point where we've got a load of actionable deliverables. The problem is we've got too many now, and we now need to distill them down and prioritize. And it's a whole range of things. It's from Professor Miles at the University in Cambridge, who wants to do a genomic profile of all the 2.8 million people in Greater Manchester at one end, to, guess what, AstraZeneca doing an active science STEM program with Oldham Athletic and Manchester City. So we do that with Cambridge United, we do it with Macclesfield Town, and we do it with Everton, because they're near to our three sites. It's not unhelpful that Andy Burnham is a big Everton fan. So to now extend that into Greater Manchester is really exciting. And as Mayor Paul pointed out, Peterborough United need to be on that list as well, don't they? At some point in time. So a whole kind of range of things.
Yeah, and we haven't done the call for projects yet either, so we're slightly nervous about being inundated with even more opportunities, but that's kind of a nice problem to have. So my last question to you, and you've kind of started to to suggest is with the active science program that you've just mentioned. One of the things that we're really keen to do is have businesses engaging across both ecosystems. So we have ARM, who are headquartered in Cambridge, who also have a large operation in Manchester where they can really leverage the technical talent that's there. We have a startup that, and these are just two examples, a startup that is, again, headquartered, very small. There's a handful of people in that organisation. They're based in Cambridge. They run the business from Cambridge, but they're funding a student up in Manchester. So it's just starting to see what types of projects we can actually work across the spectrum. And again, I think this is where having you as chair and you as a business in both areas, you can really help by showcasing things that you've done nationally and internationally. So like the mentoring program, I wondered if you can just spend a moment on that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like AstraZeneca's perfect, is it? It might come over that way. But I think the difference is we relocated 1,300 people from one place to another. So you had to be very careful and thoughtful about how you did that. And everyone, thinks about Big Pharma in a certain way. I tell a story that when I first started to come to Cambridge, and I was one of the early people, you'd be at a drinks reception like this and you'd say, "Oh, I'm from AstraZeneca." And people would go, "What, that wait there?" Because they talked a lot about AstraZeneca, but they'd never met anybody from AstraZeneca. So it was like whale watching, And then in a very Cambridge way, people said, "Not wait there, because I've got a load of ideas, but I want to introduce you to Catherine or Mike, who you really, really should meet." So we got that Cambridge experience from the very beginning. But one of the things we decided to do was to coach and mentor entrepreneurs and startups. So we were in the Judge Business School, who we got to know quite well, quite early. And there was me and Mene Pangalos, who I'm sure a few of you know, and Hitesh Sangani. And we all claimed that we were the one who said, "You know what, we should make this mentoring program really meaningful and make a real thing of it." And fast forward to this year, we've got 120 mentors in a mentoring pool in Cambridge. They are now mentoring companies in Manchester and Oxford. And we're building a mentor pool in Macclesfield, So just from what was an idea to be, good neighbours landing in Cambridge has become a huge thing, not only in the UK. People might know we've got an aeroplane that goes from Gothenburg in Sweden to Cambridge. And we had colleagues flying to Cambridge to mentor Cambridge companies flying from Sweden. And of course, after a few weeks, they said, "This is madness." And then Gothenburg set up their own mentoring program across the Nordics. And we've got similar programs in 27 countries around the world, and quite a big mentoring program in China. And it's a bit of an exaggeration, but that all started from that conversation in the Judge Business School 12 years ago.
And that's the kind of magic that we want to happen across the partnership, where we learn in one area, translate it into another area. So, Shaun, hopefully that wasn't too painful for you.
No, it wasn't as bad as I'd feared.
No, I'll save it for another time. And by the way, when we talk about people claiming this, claiming that, I am very happy if everyone in the room claims that they were responsible for the success of the Cambridge-Manchester partnership. Okay, Shaun, thank you very much. You can be relieved of your chair. Not your chairship. That would have been very awkward, wouldn't it? No, you've just been fired. Just joking. Okay, so now let's move on to our second fireside chat, where I'm absolutely delighted. As I've just said, we've got the support of the mayoral combined authorities. So we have Mayor Paul Bristow coming to join us, and Chief Executive of Greater Manchester Combined Authority, Caroline Simpson. So, Caroline, thank you very much for joining us and being with us today. I'm going to get straight into the questions for you. In February, we had the first board meeting that Shaun has just alluded to, where you hosted us and gave us an amazing tour of lots of things that are happening in Manchester. And what was very clear to me was the level of passion and support that the GMCA has for the partnership. And I wondered if you could just start with that as to why you are so actively involved.
Thanks, Faye. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me, and sincere apologies from my mayor, Andy, who you will understand reasons why he couldn't be here today. But what he would absolutely want me to express is the real deep commitment that we have to this partnership. There are so many reasons why it works, some of which I think Shaun has eloquently talked about already. But from our perspective, it really shows a kind of statement around how the landscape of devolution and mayoral combined authorities is starting to reshape economic policy in the UK, because we didn't ask for permission to develop this partnership. We didn't seek government support for it. Actually, two regions came together that have got real common interest, very much common ambition, but also understood the complementarity and the kind of win-win situation that can come from deep collaboration. And, you know, there is absolutely a futility in competition, isn't there, within our nation? And UK PLC needs every region, every bit of the UK firing on all cylinders. And so kind of at a very base level, it's an absolute no-brainer. And what it's also evidencing is the ability for regions to kind of step outside of some of those normal confines, going out and creating a partnership, creating a joint vision. And then, as we've seen with the funding that the universities have leveraged in, and the partnership that's now really firmly cemented under Shaun's leadership, investment does flow when you've got that real strong political and institutional commitment between two places that makes sense economically, makes sense logically. And if you're looking in from a global market and you think, well, why on earth weren't they working together 20 years ago? I think, you know, you wouldn't be surprised at that. So I could go on in terms of all the levels, but I'll kind of come back to it maybe in a short while.
That's perfect. Thank you, Caroline. So, Paul, congratulations, first of all, because you've just passed your first year as Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, haven't you?
Has it only been a year?
It's only been a year, which is quite amazing. And during that time, you have launched one of the most ambitious plans for growth across the country, which is phenomenal. So, with that as a backdrop, what do you think that you're going to be able to leverage from the partnership?
Well, Caroline, yes, we've all noticed you're not Andy, and we might be saying that we understand, but I sincerely hope Andy will be at the UK DJ Battle of the Mayors tomorrow night. Probably not, no. We're obviously running scared, nothing to do with anything else he's doing. So I just take the view that you don't get anywhere by thinking small. And when we produced our growth plan, there's a few sort of raised eyebrows. There's a few people thinking, goodness me, you know, what's this tripling GVA? What's all this when it comes to development? And for me, what that growth plan is all about, that's what, you know, unconstrained growth looks like. And we always know that growth is constrained by all sorts of different factors. But what we wanted to demonstrate was a sort of shopping list, the sorts of things that could be achieved if we really lent into this Cambridge kind of growth agenda, if the government lent into it, if the private sector lent into it, if our delivery partners all lent into it. This is the sort of thing that we could achieve. And look, for me, what this partnership with Manchester really kind of offers in terms of collaboration is that when you're talking about Cambridge and talking about Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, you're no longer just talking about one place in isolation. You can talk about two places together, and you know we're bigger than the sum of our parts. You know, our friends over there at Stansted Airport will tell you all about that. Well, they're you know, owned by Manchester, but we're talking, you know, about the strengths of our offer together. So that's why I think it is. And look, to me, And if you look at the combined authorities and you point to an area and you think to yourself, that's synonymous with devolution and successful devolution, you look at Manchester and you look at the partnerships that they've created. All the best ideas that I've ever had, I've stolen from other people, and I don't mind, admitting that. And so when I went to, Manchester, I looked at some of the things that you were doing there, and it makes absolute sense that we should be learning from you, learning from some of the things that have happened there in order to get the best possible outcome for our residents, okay? And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, making sure that we get the best possible outcome from our residents. The one true piece of learning that I did really take, actually, was how much the universities, all of them, are really embedded into everything that you do. And in terms of the University of Cambridge and ARU, we've got two fantastic universities, and we really need to lean into them a lot more in order to achieve what we want to achieve in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
And thank you both for those honest answers as well, because I think that absolutely demonstrates what the partnership is trying to do, which is don't follow the normal mould, challenge, question, build things in a slightly different way, because we'll get more impact with that. And I know that from even our discovery round tables that we've run, if you map the strengths of one place and the weaknesses of the other, you end up with actually a whole picture. And that's a really powerful thing that we've got to play with. I talked in my introduction about the third objective being good growth, and I think this is really important that we keep a check on, are we doing the right things, Paul, as you've just said, for our residents. So I spoke to I know quite a few of you in the room, that there's a lot that I didn't know, and there's a lot from the investment and development community here. So from your perspective, Caroline, why is good growth so important to what you're doing in Greater Manchester?
So we've set out a plan for next decade of good growth that's ambitious for our place, but it's equally ambitious for our people, for our residents, and it really goes back to the basics of a kind of successful economy and a successful place. Does need jobs, does need innovation, does need kind of that stimulation of its economy, but it needs as prosperous a population as possible. And how do we do that? We do that at a place where we think about how do we really target the jobs and the growth and the opportunities at our population, and particularly at our young people. And never has this been more needed than ever before, with the numbers of young people not in education and training. So we have a very, very clear vision that everything is linked. We have an incredible ecosystem that's been built up over decades in Greater Manchester that involves the business community, it involves the universities, all public institutions, our community voluntary and faith sector, everybody pulling in the same direction. And the kind of real tangible examples of what good growth means is, if we're investing in development and growth in Greater Manchester, we ask everybody to sign a social contract, and we are really ensuring that local supply chains, good employment charters, apprenticeships, all of those pathways are opened up for our young people. But equally, we are telling the story of our growth for our young people, so they can see their path to the job opportunities. And then, more ambitiously, as we move into the next level of devolution, we're in the process of really rethinking our whole skills and education system. And you can only do that when you think about regional economies and you think about something that you can really touch and feel, and the shape of what's happening in your city or what's happening in your place. So good growth is a vision, it's an ambition, but it's backed up by a whole system approach to changing public services, changing skills pathways, and really connecting the growth with the residents right across Greater Manchester. It's also for us about growth reaching every part of Greater Manchester. So the city skyline has changed, we absolutely know, and hopefully you are aware of the change in Manchester, but our next decade is about really reaching out into every bit of our town centres, every bit of our community, and spreading that growth out.
Thanks, Caroline. And Paul?
Yeah, so those of you who have unfortunately seen me speak at this conference already, you'd have probably heard me kind of tell you this statistic already, that there was a survey relatively recently that said that 43% of people in this country, only 43%, thought economic growth was in itself a good thing. And 37% of people thought that this was a bad thing. And when he picked underneath that a little bit in terms of 37%, a lot of it was, there's some people that are concerned about environmental reasons and all the rest of it. But most of that 37% felt that economic growth wasn't for them. They felt it's something that happened to other people. And that's quite a frightening statistic. Because when we are talking about growth, if it doesn't work for, my friend who's living in a one-bedroom flat with 3 kids living in King's Hedges, one of the poorest parts of Cambridge, then it's just not working full stop. We've got to think about how we make sure that growth reaches and touches everybody. So one of the reasons I ended up doing this job, and again, this is another story that some of you may have heard, but I remember in the run-up to the 2024 election, I used to be the Member of Parliament for Peterborough, and I was in a pub with some of my campaign team. And on the table, sort of just down the way from me, I saw a group of 18, 19-year-old lads. And when you're a politician, you get quite good at side eyes, your peripherals, and you can see if someone's talking about you from the side. And under these lads getting a little bit excited, there's Paul Bristow over there and all the rest of it. And so eventually one of them kind of came up and said, "Oh, can we have a photo?" and all the rest of it. So I had a kind of photo with them, and there was a bit of jeering and all the rest of it. And I sat down with them afterwards, and they said, I said, "What's going on, lads?" And they said, "Paul, look, we all think, you've been a good MP for Peterborough, you're Mr. Peterborough, we all know who you are, but not a single one of them was going to vote for me." And when I turned around and asked that question, they turned around and said, "Well, it's because we don't feel there's the opportunities for us to go out and get the sorts of jobs and sorts of careers that we feel we want." And every single one of them was either sofa surfing or living at home. And one of them told me that they felt the only chance they would ever have to get a place of their own was to make their girlfriends pregnant. And I thought, I wouldn't vote for me either if I were you. And it just kind of sat home and I thought to myself, well, what am I doing? Then as the MP and a candidate in a general election. And that's what really inspired me to go out and do this job, and what I can do for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, the place that I call home, how I am able to spread growth. And look, I've seen, the Cambridge Pledge, and I think that's a big significant part of it, making sure that we do reinvest in communities. But we need to do a better job, I think, sometimes, that when we talk about economic growth, we answer those questions about who, what, when, how, and why that matters to everyday people living in somewhere like Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Yeah, it's that accessibility message, isn't it? We all understand one set of language, but we've got to make sure that everyone actually understands it as well. So my final question to you both, please. It's time to get your crystal ball out. We have 3 years of this project. What would you like to see from a mayoral combined authority perspective? What would you like to see us achieve? Caroline, do you want to go first?
So a couple of things, maybe, to get us started. I think overall, more investment flowing into both areas. I think there's a kind of sense that Manchester's looking and being a bit sneery about how much investment and research money goes into the Golden Triangle. Well, that's gone. We're absolutely in the space of let's grow the pie, let's grow the overall share of investment that's flowing and both benefit. So I think a real tangible evidence of that would be great within 3 years. I think the other test of our success is, can we track a brilliant idea, a germ of that investment, maybe one of those ideas that Shaun talked about, and really show how either it has been scaled and commercialised or it has been built into the fabric of the rest of our ecosystem. And I think the benefit, again, of a place approach, a whole place approach, a combined authority, is we can get our arms around the whole place. And if we've got a brilliant idea and we're so connected in to the health system, let's do it. If we've got the ability to do it, we've got the powers to be able to do it, let's try new things that doesn't always need that national support. So a tangible commercialisation of a brilliant idea, doesn't matter where it is or where it's commercialised, but showing that actual elastic band linked and a greater share of overall investment.
Yeah, well, I was very taken by what Caroline said earlier on, that when we did this, when this Manchester-Cambridge partnership was set up, we didn't wait for permission to do this. This was something that we did on our own. And, that's a sort of, not risk, that's not a risk at all, but that's the sort of attitude, I think, culture we need much more as a country, rather than waiting, for someone to give us permission to do something. Let's go out and do it. So I think what I want to see is, let's go and do that again. Okay, what can we find is the one thing that's going to, as you say, scale up that innovation, make sure that 27 unicorns become 35, to make sure that we get another headline company based both in Manchester, like AstraZeneca, based in both Manchester, and in Cambridge. And the thing that I really want to see out of this is how we can learn lessons from one another. How can I develop MRT, mass rapid transit, in Cambridge, learning from what you've done in Manchester? How can we work together in terms of the funding packages to make sure that my combined authority and the University of Cambridge and ARU can work together to create something, in terms of a wider pot of money that we can invest in, so the businesses can scale up for the future and we can deliver those investable propositions. That's the sort of thing I want to see.
Okay, thank you. I accept the challenge. I think they're all within the remit of what we're intending to do as a partnership. And just to close off, I think, for me, we're not trying to create another arc or another corridor or anything like that here. What we're trying to do is create a new model for innovation-led businesses. So it is about attracting the investors to give them a good investable proposition to make life easier for them to select us as a whole. It's about the developers knowing that we can create new types of innovation-driven activities for them. So all I would say is, if this is of interest to you, then please do come and talk to us. We're very much at the start of this journey and we need everyone to participate. But thank you both so much for your insights there. Very much appreciated, and it's great to have you keep challenging us with what your expectations are as well. So thank you very much.
Enjoyed it.
That's it. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and for please stay, have another drink, talk to us. Thank you very much.